We, the Bangla people, welcome you to our country. We are the lawful inhabitants of this peninsula for thousands of generations. We are part of this land on which we stand, part of the waters that flow in and around. We are part of the dreaming stories that are connected. The full awareness of oneness with the land and waters will ensure a future for the children of tomorrow. Ngaya Punaguru Bangala Mirinya, Yura Damilbu. Thank you.
Item 2, our attendance record. We have apologies tonight from Councillor Knox, Councillor Border and Councillor Westerman. We have no leave of absence. Item 3, declaration of members' conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest they need to declare? No conflict of interest, thank you. Item 4, reports, council officers 4.1, corporate services. Of course, 4.1.1, submissions on the draft 2024-25 annual business plan and budget.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'll just give some very brief introductory comments and then hand over to Grant for some more detailed comments. But we present this annual business plan and budget to you tonight for a decision to finalise the draft and bring that back through to the June council meeting for adoption formally. But it's been based on quite significant input from council members. You'll recall back in January we set the parameters for the annual business plan and budget and then held a number of workshops. And whilst those workshops were being held, some quite significant feedback came through from the Audit and Risk Committee and also the SCOSA report. And those two pieces of feedback have actually formed a significant part of the forming of this annual business plan and budget, because it is based on the reformed long-term financial plan and also Council's two-speed strategic plan that it has adopted. And that two-speed strategic plan sees a focus on very much as business as usual and financial restraint in the first couple of years, with a reduction in sort of the new assets allocations or new capital works allocations over the term of the long-term financial plan, including in this first year for the annual business plan and budget. And so this annual business plan and budget is presented to you with the benefit of that feedback that's come through from the Audit and Risk Committee and SCOSA, and also with the benefit that has come through the community engagement program. I'm going to pause there and hand over to Grant for some more introductory comments, and then we'll have it open for discussion.
Thank you, Kathy. So I guess as we've discussed, we've been through quite a large process, as Kathy mentioned. We've made changes to the long-term financial plan through that process from that feedback. So as you remember, we cut back our projections of new investment over the term of the plan, implemented a small reduction in FTEs for the coming year, but also there are further reductions already built in from year 2 of the plan, and also we're able to build in those lower projected rate increases across the term of the plan. So picking up a lot of that feedback from SCOSA and the Audit Committee and building that into the plan. And that obviously allowed us to go out to consultation with a rate increase of 5%, being what was 4.2% plus 0.8, and just before we started consultation, March CPI was released for Adelaide, which is what we use to adopt our budget, and it was very close to so we assumed 4.2, it ended up being 4.3, and so that very small amount we were able to absorb through the budget, so no change there to the overall rate increase. So basically a 4.3% plus 0.7 above CPI for a 5% proposed rate increase. And as you can see from the report, I mean, we got very little feedback, actually, less than we've probably got for sort of 4 or 5 years now. Last year, I remember we were saying that it was probably the most feedback we'd had in a very long time, and the most attendance at our public information evenings and so on. And I think it's important to remember, obviously, like this time last year, we were sitting with a very large amount for CPI at 7.6%, and ultimately we were looking at a rate increase, 8.5 or above, and obviously we went with an 8.7% rate increase. So different times, I guess, that time ago. I mean, CPI at the moment is still at a historically a high amount. It's above the long-term goal for the RBA, so it's still not back to sort of that business as usual for CPI. But I think based on probably where we've been the last few years, it's the lowest CPI in 3 years. And why we don't like to compare our rate increases to every other council, because as we always say every year, every council is different and is in their own circumstance, and it's very hard to compare apples and oranges when you're talking about rate increases, because your rate base is coming from a different place and all sorts of factors. But I guess inevitably people will look at other councils and will sort of compare where things are coming out. And I guess for this year, we are looking at a rate increase that's probably at the lower end of what is being seen across the state. You can see in this report we've compiled the councils across the Eyre Peninsula and the Upper Spencer Gulf, and we're sort of at the lower end range for that. But even when you look at across the state and metro councils, there are not a lot of councils going below 5% this year, and there are many sort of looking between that 5 and 7. And I think what that shows is a little bit of feedback on that. I think council over the last few years has been quite disciplined in its rate increases. Over the last 2 years, probably made some of those hard decisions when CPI was quite high, and stuck with what our long-term financial plan said, where maybe some other councils have taken the easier road over that time and gone with lower than CPI rate increases. And I guess that is the benefit now for council of you stick to the plan, and then we can keep sticking to the plan. And obviously we've adjusted slightly our rate increases and how they compare to CPI, but sticking with our long-term financial plan and seeing some of the benefit of that discipline over the last few years. And as we know, our financial projections still have improvements to be made, and we still want to move out of that deficit position, but definitely I think moving in the right direction in terms of what we're looking at. So very little feedback. There's probably only one real submission of substance that outlined a few points. They weren't bad points, but I guess when you're getting one response out of 11,000 ratepayers, it's hard to really suggest any big changes to the plan. And the other two were sort of a bit more general or not really related to the budget, the submissions we received. So happy to take any questions or discuss further.
Anybody have any questions of our finance manager? If not, can I ask one for clarification, please?
Yes.
I only picked it up earlier, otherwise I would have caught up. In the recommendation 3, we refer that it will continue to reflect a rate increase of 5%.
You've updated the wrong number there, and yes, that looks pretty
And then
good.
in brackets, the two figures there don't add up. Pardon? Can I quote you?
Apologies, that must be my mistake. Writing the report, updated the wrong number in the brackets.
See, when they add up to the same figure, I can make sense of it then. Oh, thank you. Any other comments or questions to Grant? Yes, Pete. Councillor.
Just the annual business plan, page 5. Councillor Todd appears as an orange dot. So can we get an updated photo?
Don't like it.
But did you have one taken by Sky? I think because the rest were done by Sky, she didn't have one on file, so I'll definitely sort that out. Yep.
priorities, isn't it? Definitely. Right. Any further questions or comments?
I was very surprised at the lack of community interest this year. Really surprised.
Some of us have had a discussion about that and really wonder whether their angst was directed at the public meeting we had here for the change from site to capital. The angst there, my gut tells me that because it's been a fairly low percentage we're talking about, and they expressed their views then, that whether they just went back, oh, well, it's nothing, mate. That's all I can think of, because yes, I was astounded.
I was expecting, World Championship Wrestling at the first one after they had that, when we're swapping from capital to capital value. I would have thought they'd be marching in the streets. And when we ride up to that first session, there's only 3 or 4 people there, and they didn't really care much.
That's all I can put it down to, was that their angst was at that very first one, which wasn't our real rate and budget meeting. And then if it had been again 8.5 or 9 or more, then we might have had.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
I mean, that's for sure. But yeah, yes, certainly.
It could also well be that we have been out talking with the community in relation to the ESCOSA report and the Audit and Risk Committee recommendations from Council's financial sustainability point of view. So there is quite a large awareness out in the community in terms of Council's financial position. And with the changeover from site to capital value, that's going to be the more personal change for individuals, as opposed to the broader spectrum of 5% across the whole of the population base. But I think I concur with Mayor Stone in the context that the 5% is seeming reasonable in the context of CPI and also in the context of Council's financial position.
Right. Any further questions or comments? In that case, we have a recommendation in front of us. Would somebody care to move? Councillor Klobuchar moved and Deputy Mayor Pons seconded. I will put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, on that note, we come to item 5. We need to go into confidential. So would somebody care to move that we go into confidential, please? Move Councillor Simpson, seconded Councillor Klobuchar. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. And on that note, I can declare tonight's special meeting closed. Thank you for coming out.